We all know the New York Islanders have to make some trades to improve this team and become Stanley Cup contenders. But would they even dare think about making this particular move, trading one of their best players? We've got all that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We've got a busy show today, lots to talk about. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name, where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, including off-season hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, the draft. If it's happening to the New York Islanders, we'll cover it here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. And it's great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Every day, as you know, we've been talking the last pretty much since the season ended in various ways about how this team can go from where they are in the messy middle, not good enough to be a real Stanley Cup contender, kind of a team that either barely makes or barely misses the playoffs. If they can go from there to being a legitimate contender for a cup. And we talked on some shows about the obstacles, the no trade clauses, the bad salaries, the lengthy contracts, the lack of cap space, the lack of young prospects in the organization. And we've basically said that if you really want to get from the messy middle where the Islanders are right now to a place where the Islanders could be counted among the Stars, the Oilers, the Rangers, the Panthers, you need to make some drastic moves. And let's be honest, everybody, you may not be able to get that done in 1 year. And look, Maxim Siplakov, who they signed, free agent out of the KHL, good, low cost, low risk, potentially high reward move. Cost you less than $1 million under the cap. You got a guy who scored 31 goals in the KHL. We'll see whether or not that will eventually translate to the NHL. But overall, that's a little bit of the outside the box typical thinking that the Islanders need. But realistically, they don't have enough cap space to truly improve the team by trade or by free agency. So they're going to have to trade away somebody. And I guess, a lot of people, a lot of listeners and viewers have commented or emailed saying, hey, what about trading away Ilya Sorokin? The logic behind it is that in the modern NHL, you don't need an elite goalie to win the Stanley Cup. And, I think we've seen that in the recent past. I mean, the St. Louis Blues a few years back won the Cup, with a goalie who, again, wasn't a bad goalie by any stretch of the imagination, but you could hardly say that, this was an elite goalie. I mean, Jordan Binnington, not elite. Braden Holtby, good, but certainly not elite. And that now, starting this year, Ilya Sorokin is going to have a cap hit of $8.25 million. And while that is not the highest paid goalie in the league, you could probably get a good enough goalie to win a cup for half that. Let's say $4.5, $5 million, a little more than half of what they're paying Sorokin. And you could take that savings, that difference, and put it toward other needs that this team has. And we know they need a goal scorer. Realistically, they need two. But again, you need a goal scorer and you need a puck-moving defenseman, and you need to get younger, stronger, younger, faster, and more skilled. You don't have a lot of guys on this roster who both are desired by other teams and have, don't have no trade clauses and don't have contracts where you probably have to retain some significant salary in order to make the move. People have said, hey, trade Ilya Sorokin. You'll get a lot for him. Teams will not be scared off by his contract because, he's in his prime now. He should have, let's say, 4, 5, 6 years of prime left. And by the time you get toward the end of the contract, $8.25 million for even an average starting goalie, and he'll probably be better than that, will no longer be a high salary. Here's the thing. Couple of obstacles here. Number one, Lou Lamoriello is still the GM. He's the guy who signed Sorokin to the extension. He's not going to want to move on from Ilya Sorokin. Lou Lamoriello builds his teams from the goal out. That is how he has always done it. I think, Martin Brodeur is the prime example of that in New Jersey, where he won multiple Stanley Cups. So that is unlikely. Obviously, you could only make a move until July 1st, because then the no movement clause in Sorokin's contract kicks in. Not just a modified no movement clause, but a full no movement clause. And again, it just wouldn't be a Lou thing to do. And in order to make it happen, here's what you're essentially admitting. If you make a trade of Ilya Sorokin, you're basically saying flat out, we know this team, the way it's put together right now, we need a full rebuild. We can't get it done with this group. And that may be true, but I don't think it's something that Lou Lamoriello is willing to admit. And so unless you get a goalie in return, the move isn't designed for this team to win now. And I think, you would rather get a scorer in return and maybe let Varlamov be your goalie and then try to acquire a low-cost backup, pay him, $2.5 million tops, and go that way. But if you do that, you're almost saying, okay, we're going to trade away a lot of our other players, whether it's Anders Lee or J.G. Pajot or even Brock Nelson. If you're trading away Sorokin, you're really saying we're going to strip this team down and then try to build it back up piece by piece. And look, we know Lou Lamoriello is not the kind of GM who likes rebuilds, especially at his age and especially with this team. He believes in the core. He likes the core, et cetera, et cetera. You also have a coach in Patrick Roy, who is one of the all-time great goalies in NHL history. And And you got to figure a great goalie can work with an Ilya Sorokin and a Semyon Varlamov and get the most out of his goalies. I don't think this is a likely move. In fact, I would put the chances of it happening at less than 5%. It would essentially be an admission that we're going to strip the whole thing down and start from scratch. And the only reason I think that it might be worth considering is because if you wait 2, 3 more years and this team just gets older and you still don't have NHL ready players in your prospect pool to replace them, you're going to end up becoming the San Jose Sharks or the Anaheim Ducks or the Chicago Blackhawks, teams that are facing 2, 3, 4 years of being near the bottom of the league and then hoping that you hit on your draft picks and you make a couple of smart moves and that results in a rebuild of your team. It's not going to happen because Lou Lamoriello isn't going in that direction. Is it insane to think that it should happen? Probably not. Is Ilya Sorokin one of the better goalies in the league? He wasn't this past year, but overall, I think even this year, most NHL scouts would say, if I were starting a team, he'd be in my top 10, not the way he played this past season, but overall, like if I'm trying to build a team in 2024, 2025, list the top 10 goalies I would want to have as my starter. I think Sorokin is still on that list. I don't think this is going to happen, but that doesn't mean it, if somebody makes an offer to Lou Lamoriello that he can't refuse, it's worth thinking about based on where the organization is right now. We have got more to get to on today's show. We will continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders as we take a look at Scott Mayfield's season, what his role is going forward, and a whole lot more. Plus, we have an update on Brock Nelson at the World Championships. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, this is a tough one, a Slovakian winger who played parts of 3 seasons with the Islanders in the very late 1990s and very early 2000s. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got that and a whole lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, so Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time is the view from your seat. You go on the app, and you get a panoramic view from your seat before you buy the tickets, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we continue our player-by-player look at the New York Islanders. We've been doing this for the last couple of weeks here, and we're going to break down the strengths and weaknesses of every player on the roster and basically assess what their season was like, what their future with the team is likely to be, and what role they are going to play if they return to the team next year. We've already discussed Matt Martin, Oliver Wahlstrom, Alexander Romanov, Ilya Sorokin, Anders Lee. Well, today it's time for Scott Mayfield. And this was a tough year for Scott Mayfield, the 31-year-old defenseman, 6'5", 220, just signed a controversial 7-year extension for $3.5 million a year. And let's face it, a lot of people not happy with the terms of that deal. And, it's unusual when you see a defenseman, a third pair defenseman, A, get paid $3.5 million a year, and B, sign a 7-year extension. And unfortunately for Mayfield, who has proven himself to be a capable defensive defenseman on the third pair, he had a year that got off on the wrong foot and never really got better. He was injured in the season opener, suffered a broken bone in his ankle, and yet he continued to struggle through and play, managed to play 41 games for the Islanders, had 5 assists, no goals, was a -7, 35 penalty minutes, only averaged 18 minutes and 46 seconds of ice time per game. That is his lowest total since 2018, 2019. Still blocked 106 shots in just 41 games, had 70 hits in 41 games. Both of those numbers, by the way, up from where he was a year ago. But clearly, while trying to tough it out for the team, Mayfield was not able to play at the level that he normally plays at. And it was frustrating for him and painful for him, I'm sure, and frustrating for Islanders fans who, let's forget the contract for a minute. Scott Mayfield, 10 years with the Islanders. He's been a great teammate, a solid player for this team. Been a regular since 2017, 2018. An integral part of the two teams that went to the conference final. He's a likable guy. He gives you effort. He's a blue-collar kind of defenseman who will occasionally give you that little jolt of offense, although sometimes when he tries to create offense, he sacrifices defense and gets into trouble. But this year, it just wasn't there for Scott Mayfield. And by February, he basically admitted, I'm going to shut it down. I can't get it done. Opted for the season-ending surgery, and here we are. Scott Mayfield, everybody said he will be ready to play for when training camp opens. So hopefully that is the case. And now the question becomes, what role does Scott Mayfield play on this team going forward? And, he's a right shot defenseman. They are very valuable in this league right now. Most teams cannot find enough right shot defensemen. You look at the Islanders right now, you have Ryan Pollock, you have Noah Dobson, and then you have Robert Bortuzzo, who is, as we know, an unrestricted free agent who may or may not be back. Out of all the prospects that you have, the only 3 right shot defensemen under contract to the Islanders are Aiden Fulp, who is 24. You have Grant Hutton, who's 28, and Paul Ledoux, who's 31. None of those 3 guys are really considered prospects at this point. So unless you re-sign Bortuzzo, which I don't think the Islanders will do if Mayfield is ready to come back, you got to expect Scott Mayfield to be your third pair right shot defenseman. And, he'll do his time killing penalties, and he'll do his time doing the usual things that he does, being physical, trying to stick up for his teammates on occasion, keep opponents away from the front of the net. He's got to be back to his old self. He's got to be better at getting pucks out of the zone. He's got to be more efficient defensively and just smarter with the puck. And he's got to stay out of the box. That is something that was a problem for him, not just this year, but the year before when he had 83 penalty minutes, a career high. And this year, again, I think the injury made it worse. But, a lot of those penalties were the lazy or I'm a step behind, I got to pull somebody down kind of a penalty. And, he's got to cut down on that too. But I fully expect we get back to the 19, 20 minutes a game, third pair defenseman, maybe some time on the PK, all coming up for Scott Mayfield. And with 6 years left on his contract, and a no trade clause, by the way, in case you weren't sure about that, got to expect that we're going to see more Scott Mayfield with the Islanders coming up in 2024, 2025. We have got a lot more to discuss on today's show. We'll update Brock Nelson and Team USA at the Worlds. Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day, all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Indeed. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills. Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 job credit now at Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So, Team USA and Brock Nelson are still in it. They are advancing at the Worlds, and they are headed to the quarterfinals now after beating Latvia on Tuesday by a score of 6-3, and that rounds out their preliminary round play. In the first 7 games in the preliminary round, Brock Nelson has 3 goals and 4 assists, so he is at a point per game pace in the Worlds. And by the way, he had the most ice time out of all skaters for Team USA in the 6-3 win over Latvia, playing 23 minutes and 28 seconds of ice time in that game. He now has 19 goals and 35 points in 39 games over 5 different tournaments representing the United States of America. So, the United States ends up qualifying for the quarterfinals. They were second in Group B, and they end up now heading into playing the 3rd seed in Group A in the quarterfinals, and that will take place today, Thursday. So Brock Nelson with a chance right now to help Team USA at the Worlds. He's done a nice job so far, and the Islanders are hopeful, A, most importantly, that Brock Nelson stays healthy, but B, that he can help Team USA get a medal and maybe even win the entire tournament. That would, of course, be a most welcome victory for Brock and Team USA. And hopefully we will see that, and we'll keep you up to date on Brock Nelson's performance and the performance of Team USA throughout the rest of the tournament. So good luck to Brock Nelson. Little tidbit, but we'll get to that probably on tomorrow's show. But, at this point in time, we have the conference finals in both conferences underway. You have the Rangers and Panthers. You have the Stars and Oilers. Still some former Islanders active in this tournament and who have a chance to win the cup. And we'll certainly keep an eye on that as well. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. This is a tough one. I'll be impressed if anyone guessed who it is, but we're a day early. Friday will be the 47th birthday of former Islanders forward Vladimir Orzag. Orzag, drafted by the Islanders in the 5th round in 1995. He is a Slovakian native, 5'11", 193 pounds. Made his NHL debut with the Islanders in 97-98, played in 11 games, had 1 assist and 2 penalty minutes, and played in parts of 2 more seasons for the Islanders, 98-99 and 1999-2000. Spent most of his time in those seasons with their AHL affiliate, which back then was the Lowell Lock Monsters. After that, played a little bit in Sweden, and then played 3 seasons, full seasons, for the Nashville Predators, briefly for the St. Louis Blues, and then was back in Slovakia and Sweden to close out his career. 289 career NHL games, 54 goals, 119 points, 194 penalty minutes, 6 playoff games, all with Nashville, 2 goals, 4 penalty minutes in those. We go back and look at one of his most memorable games as an Islander, April 12th, 1999. Islanders visiting the Devils in New Jersey at the Continental Airlines Arena. The goalies, well, it's Felix Potvin for the Islanders, Martin Brodeur for the Devils, and our Islanders' birthday of the day, Vladimir Orzag, opens the scoring midway through the first period, his first career NHL goal. Dmitry Nabokov and Barry Richter with the assists. Islanders go on to defeat the Devils in this game by a score of 4-2 in this game. Our Islanders' birthday of the day, Vladimir Orzag, a goal. He was a +2 in this game, and he scored on his only shot while playing 15 minutes and 2 seconds of ice time. 2 assists for Dmitry Nabokov in this game. He was the only Islander with multiple points. Felix Potvin, 55 saves as the Islanders were outshot 57-23, but still managed to get the win. So Vladimir Orzag is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thanks for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we'll continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders. We'll talk about the season that Pierre Engvall had and what lies ahead for him and his future role with the team. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.